Good morning. With the help of Hashem, we are learning Yerushalmi Ma'aser Sheni, Perik Beis, Halacha Beis. We're learning today Daf Mem Tes. We left off on Daf Mem Tes, Amud Aleph, 7 lines from the top of the Amud. The Mishnah, Halacha Beis, gave boundaries of cities that surround Yerushalayim, that from them to Yerushalayim is a 1 day's travel, obviously by foot. The Mishnah said that Eilat or Ayelis, however you pronounce it, is its boundary city to the south. That means that from Eilat, obviously not the modern day Eilat, but from the Eilat of the Mishnah, all the way to Yerushalayim is a full 1 day's walk. Akravas is the city from the north, Lud from Maidev, and Yarden, which is the Jordan River, Mizrach from the east. The Gemara began, as we already started learning, a question that we have different stories from people or peoples, as we'll see, that lived in cities that the Gemara takes it for granted. These cities are known to be farther away from the 4 that we mentioned, from these 4 boundary cities, and yet the people managed to go from there to Yerushalayim in a much shorter amount of time. Just as an example, we had 2 versions. Nakai, especially according to the first version, actually, he lived in a city or in a location called Migdal Tziviyah, and which is further from the 4 cities mentioned in the city. And imagine he placed his Eruv Tchumen in the Beis HaMikdash. So it's not only that he was able to go Friday to place the Eruv and to walk back. It's much more than that. You can never place an Eruv Tchumen beyond 2,000 Amma, which is 1 mil. Right? So we're talking about what's 1 mil. Mahalach mil is a machloikis and halacha. 18 minutes, 24 minutes. Forget about a day's walk. A very short amount of time. The other version makes it a lot easier. That he was a sofer. That means that he would be a teacher. Let's go with that. And he wanted to authenticate his text. He could have gone there Friday morning. Maybe it took him a couple of hours to go and to text proof whatever he was going to teach from and to come back. But still, if you can go and come within a day, is a raya that a farther city is not Mahalach Yoim, it's much closer to Yerushalayim. And we're going to have many other such stories. And the Gemara is going to say, the words of the Gemara is that during these stories, which L'cha'ura happened Bisman by Yisrishon, there were tunnels. The Gemara says the words tunnels. We know that Shlomo HaMelech was the one that we can even perhaps argue invented the subway system, all to facilitate our journey to Yerushalayim during the 3 Regalim. Perhaps it's much more than a tunnel. Perhaps it's a concept of Kfitzas HaDerech, as I'll suggest perhaps when we learn the Gemara inside, but that's the way we're going to resolve all of the stories that we have still yet to learn. We're going to have another very important piece of Gemara today in the Yerushalmi. I know that when it comes to the order of the final redemption, so we have the Seder that we have in Siddur. Uvenei Yerushalayim, then comes Tzemach David, right? We have in the Rambam, the Seder of the Rambam. The Rambam writes that Mashiach will first bring back security to Israel, then he's going to build the Beis HaMikdash, and then he's going to gather in all of the Yidden that live outside Eretz Yisrael, which means Mashiach will come before the building of the Beis HaMikdash. And we have in Chazal different opinions. In our Yerushalmi over here, in Ma'aser Sheni Daf Mem Tes, in our pagination, we're going to have a statement from Rav Acha, which is going to be Gavaldik, that the Beis HaMikdash is going to be built before Malchus Beis David, before the government, which will be at its head. Mashiach will run the government. That the Beis HaMikdash will be built prior to that. And Gavaldik, we're going to get into that when we learn it inside. That's going to be all on Amud Aleph. On Amud Beis, we're going to go back to the Mishnah. In the Mishnah, we had 2 arguments between Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel. Today, we're going to focus only on their first argument. Revoi is similar to Ma'aser Sheni. That's what we learned so far. It has to be eaten in Yerushalayim. And on top of that, if one so chooses, if one is outside Yerushalayim, you are able to redeem it on money, and then take the money to Yerushalayim, etc., as is the halacha with Ma'aser Sheni. So there are similarities. The question is, are they fully equal or not? So we had a machlekes Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel. Beis Shammai says that the Revoi is not fully like Ma'aser Sheni. Beis Shammai spoke only about 2 differences. That the Revoi is not subject to Chaimish. That means if the owner of the Revoi is the one doing the redemption, the owner does not have to add the halachic fifth, nor, says Beis Shammai, Revoi is not subject to the law, to the halacha of biur maisres. Biur maisres is something that has to happen to all of the maisres that were not yet given to their recipients. It happens twice in the 7-year cycle, meaning that even though my produce is fully mesukin after I separated the maisres, but it doesn't mean that I have to wait to give it to the Levi or to give it to the Ani or to take care of my Meiser Sheni prior to eating the rest of my produce. No, once I did the separation, my produce is bona fide chulin. I can consume it the way I like, but there is a limit as to how long am I allowed to own or keep in my possession the Meisers. And even though we already learned above in this Masechta that when it comes to Meiser Sheni, from the pasuk Shana Bashana, that ideally one should consume the Meiser Sheni or redeem it and consume its value during the year that it grew. But the din of biur is that if you didn't do it in the ideal, and avada when it comes to Meiser Rishon, that when it comes to either Erev Pesach on the 4th or the 7th, or when it comes according to the Rambam, Erev, the last day of Pesach on the 4th and in the 7th, you have to push it, remove it from your possession. You have to find the recipient. And if you don't find the recipient, you have to destroy it. Parenthetically, there is no biur on Truma because Truma is holy. Truma can never be destroyed. Truma is like kachim. So it's biur maisres dafka, maisres and not Truma, just to add a little nuance that I chapped when I was preparing this daf. Bekitza, that's what Beis Shammai says. Beis Hillel holds that no, that maiser sheni is subject to chaimish and it is subject to the din of biur. Now, let me say one thing that the Yerushalmi does not mention, and this is taken from the Bavli, that there is a Gezeda Shava that equates Revoi to Meiser Sheni. From there we know that you can redeem it. L'cha'oira. And that is, just to say the psukim, we don't have this in the Gemara here today. Then Parshas Kedoshim, which is the ground zero source for the din of Revoi, the Torah writes, Ubashana haraviz, yihiyeh kol pidiyoi, Kodesh Hilulim Lashem. We're going to get into the Hilulim today. Hilulim means that we say Halal over it. Hilulim might also mean a Hey and a Ches are interchangeables, so it can come from the Lashon of Chilul, that you have the option of being Machalalit. That we'll get to later. That's not what I'm quoting from the Bavli. Kodesh is what the Torah calls Ubashana Haravias produce, Revoi. In Parshas Bechukoisai, from the many places where the Torah speaks about Meiser Sheni, quoting the pasuk, V'chol maser ha'aretz, mizera ha'aretz, mipri ha'etz, Lashem hu, kodesh Lashem, kodesh, says the Gemara, kodesh is a Gezeda Shav. Now what we're going to have today is a Tosefta or Braisa that's going to have a machlokes between Rabbi and Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel, Bishitas Beis Shammai. Even though B'chlal we don't Paskan like Beis Shammai, this is not the only time that there's going to be a machlokes to the understanding of Shitas Beis Shammai, which is very, very consequential. Rabbi will limit Beis Shammai's opinion. Rabbi will actually hold that Beis Shammai agrees with Beis Hillel that during the 6 years of the 7-year cycle, Revoi is fully like Meiser Sheni, kodesh, subject to chaimish, subject to beer. 1 second, Beis Shammai says in the Mishnah, no chaimish, no beer. Says Rebbe, yeah, that's only on the 7th year. Don't forget, on the 7th year, there is no Meisres. So you don't have the Gezeda Shava anymore. On the 7th year, there is no one separates any Meisres. But it could be that when you planted a vineyard, its 4th year is Shvi'is. Now, I know that Shvi'is produce is Hefker. So what? But it's Revoi. No, it's Revoi, Avada, happens on the 7th year, but you don't have any more the Gezeda Shava. That's where Beis Shammai says, since on the 7th year there's no Gezeda Shava, so then how do you know that there is a Chaimish? From Meiser Sheni, the Torah never says Chaimish. How do you know that there's Biur? Torah never says to do Biur on Revoi. You know it from the Gezeda Shava. You don't have the Gezeda Shava on the 7th year. The Gemara is, okay, that's Rebbe. Rashbag holds, no. Rashbag holds that Beis Shammai Bechlal doesn't go with the Gezeda Shava. Bechlal not. That he fully compares Revoi to Bikurim, as we'll see in the Gemara today. Hilulim, just like Bikurim is something that you praise God when you bring the Bikurim. Now, there's a lot more details. And then there's going to be a Psakasha, we're going to have the Shitas Rebbe, that will go unanswered. And ultimately, the same Kasha, Shitas Rashbag, all Beshitas Beis Shammai. We're going to review this when we learn this inside. That's today's daf. At least we are beginning with some really interesting Agadat. So again, we have two versions of the story of Nakai or Nakoi, however you pronounce his name. And as I mentioned, according to the first version, Nakoi placed his Eruv Tchumen in the Beis Hamikdash. Now that's a huge question, because as I mentioned, the Eruv Tchumen is 2,000 amas, 1 mil. I just want to say, even Lashitas Rabbi Akiva, it's time to know. According to Rabbi Akiva, Tchumen is Doiraisa, but not the 1 mil, 12 mil, 24,000 amas. Time to know that. Has nothing to do with our sugya. First of all, 24,000 amas, I'm going to quote a Gemara in Pesachim, whoever remembers over here. I'm not sure in the daf. It's in the tzaddiks. The Gemara in Pesachim is speaking about what's Mahalach Yoim Beinani. The whole sugya over there about people that were far from Yerushalmi to bring the Korban Pesach. The Gemara establishes that an average person walks 10 mil, 40,000, 10 parsa. 10 parsa, 40, that's 40 mil. 40 mil. That's Mahalach Yom Echad. So again, if the four cities, Ayelas, Hakravas, Lud, and the Yarden is not a city. These are the boundaries. All of these stories happened in cities that were farther from those four. To be able to put an Eruv Tchumen in the Beis Hamikdash, in Bechlal not Shayach. Even the answer won't work. We'll get there in a moment. The second version wasn't Eruv Tchumen, but he went to the Beis Hamikdash every Friday, and he came back home Friday. In one day, he went and he returned. That's not Mahalach Yom Echad. Furthermore, okay, now we're going to go on 7 lines from the top. Another person, Shem Adam, Tartiroi. Look at these names. From a place called Mahalul. Tartiroi of Mahalul have a solik Shabbos l'goy Beis Magdasha. He would always spend Shabbos in the Beis Hamikdash. I wondered what they did for sleep, if they slept. Of course, not in the Beis Hamikdash, but Yerushalmi for sure was as a lot of achnas asarchen there. However, v'lo yhava barnash koratz l'te'inaya kadoy miminei. No one arose early Sunday morning to gather their figs earlier than him. Stam lahoyer, that figs, the ideal time to gather them is in the morning. That means that he spent Shabbos in the Beis Hamikdash. Mahalach Yom Echad, let's say people do at night, but most people do at day. That means it should have taken him the whole night to come home. No, that's not what the story is. He got home early enough. Even if he didn't go to sleep, the people rose very early in the morning to gather their figs. He was the earliest in the city to gather the figs. Tam, on a side note, many times when people have a very meaningful ruchnistic experience of it, have a fabrengen, what do they do the next morning? They wake up late. I see a message in this, that even though he went to the Beis Hamikdash, he knew how to come back and go right back to work, which is a big compliment. We're not meant, I had a great this and then slack off. But stop the fact that he was able to make it back and be the earliest to gather his figs. And again, the city of Mahalul, wherever that is, everyone knew where it was, and when the Yerushalmi was put together, was farther than these 4 boundary cities. That means it was less than a Mahalach Yom Echad for him to be able to make it back. Shabbos was out when this week? 10 to 9? Mahalach Yom Echad, early in the morning would be 6 in the morning. He would not be back on time. And a similar story, not regarding one individual, but Nois Tzipari, that the women, or the young women from the city Tzipari, have a sulkin Shabbos and L'goy Beis Magdash. Now, Bechlal, it's a big kasha. We know where Tzipari is up there in the north. Tzipari is near Tzfas. I don't even need this. It's not a Mahalach Yom Echad. In other words, we taka know it's much further. But they would go, same thing, that would spend Shabbos in the Beis HaMikdash, and they also, first of all, they also would gather the figs in the morning. It's the same. I don't think it's the same. There's some nuance. The nuance is that maybe, Tartaroi, maybe there was a person that traveled very quick. Maybe that's what the Gemara is getting at. Like, there's something new. To say that all of the girls from Tzipari, they were very diligent. They had a good work ethic. And they went to the Beis HaMikdash, and they would come back, and they would go right back to work. Benoy Tzipari, even a bigger kasha. Again, not a yachid. A group of people, you can't say that one individual maybe knew how to run, was a marathon runner.
Do we have a metric of what 1 day's travel means? Like, is it 8 hours? Is it 12 hours?
I think if someone can check, I know Yakir is here, I think it's Tzadik Dalet. Go take a look in Psachim. The Gemara in Amud Aleph. And Amud Aleph, the Gemara is speaking about B'Shem Rabbi Yechanan. Someone, how long does it take to walk? And the Gemara says 10 parsa. That's the whole Agadata there of Bein Aretz L'Rekia, Tov Kuf Shana. Chassidus quotes that a lot.
but that's a distance, I'm saying, but does that
Ah,
assume that you're spending 12 hours of time
that's a good
traveling or?
Danny, I wanna go back to Pesachim, and I'm sure we looked at it over there. I'm gonna guess that people walk the whole day. Like l'chayra. They woke up, they woke up, they davened, there was a sunrise, and they would walk. Maybe they stopped to eat once, and they, the chitoiv. I mean, they. I don't think they walk until it's dark. You have to gather in before it gets dark, but they would full days, 10 hours, 8 hours, not less than that. So again, there says the Gemara that Benois Lud. So Lud was actually one of the boundary cities that the Mishnah gave. Okay, so the girls that lived in Lud, listen to this, they would need their dose in Lud, L'kavat Shabbos. They would go daven in the Beis HaMikdash, and they would return prior to their bread fermenting. This we know from baking matzah. How long does it take for something to ferment? The famous 18 minutes, Mahal Achmil. Now again, we know where Lud is today. Like, how does it even fit with the Metzias? You see over here that they knew how to travel much quicker. People from Lud, with a car, without traffic, driving like an Israeli, will take 45 minutes. Now, how long is that a walk? That I can fit already. How long is that? I'm curious. How many kilometers? For us people, we walk what? We walk 3 miles an hour. That's what I know. Huh? So he's saying 2 days. We're saying Mahalach Yoim. But now the Gemara is proving the fact that they did it within a mill. Okay, so they had the mill of 24 minutes. They did it within 24 minutes. If I understand correctly, that this story is already going to be the answer. Why it's placed here, maybe it's a mistake in the version, but that's the way it's over here. Chad Barnash, there was a person. Have a koim rodei. Radio.
According to ChatGPT, it's about 37 kilometers.
37 kilometers. So Danny, how long will it take a person today to walk 37 kilometers? 40 mil. A mil is around a kilometer. 37 climbing up a mountain. Okay. So, but it's 37. It's Mahalach Yom. In other words, when the Mishnah writes Mahalach Yom, it fits. That also answers Danny's question. How long will it take a person today to walk this climbing up a mountain? Stama 10 hours. Google it. Ask how long will it take? That's still called Mahalach Yom. Even 12 hours, I think, can be called Mahalach Yom. But how did these young women do this? So here comes a story. There was a man. Rodeo means plowing. Oxen. Remember that in the Gemara Aviv. And while he was plowing, Pisakas Toirete Kumai, his bull, his ox, broke loose. And all of these Talmudic stories where you can just imagine, I see the guy with a big beard, with the talus cotton hanging, and have a party. So he ran. But when he ran, vuhu party. The ox is running, he's running after him, but he can't stop him. Nachmal party, the ox keeps on running, vuhu party. Too stubborn, the ox and the person. The ox is running and he's running after the ox. Adi shtakach Yosef b'Bavel. Until mitamol, he finds himself in Bavel. And just for the record, Aviv, they were plowing a field in the Holy Land. So go chase an animal from Eretz Yisrael to Bavel. Oh, so when they see Absayid, the way he was dressed, Eretz Yisrael deka. So they asked him, Amrulei Amos Nafkat, when did you leave Eretz Yisrael? Amrulei, today. Yom Day. Amr Bahadaya a Tasa. Okay, which road did you take? Like, what car were you driving? Amrulei, so he said, no, the one right over there. And he began to point somewhere behind them, Bidah. So they told me, what over there? Show us the road. Amrulei, the Asa Chamilon, come and show us. So Nafak Boye Mechamaloin, he was looking for the road that he came on, and he couldn't find it. So really, here you see an answer. I'll read a few more lines, then I'll go back to something that we learned to Shavuos night many years ago. So Afrek the Gemara, I don't know why it's placed there. This is already the answer. The Gemara is showing you that a man can run in one day from Eretz Yisrael to Bavel. If you can go in one day running from Eretz Yisrael to Bavel, all of these stories can make sense. There's a normal walk, and then there is this unique type of walking. So all of these stories show that cities that are beyond, or even the last fourth question, Benois Lud, they don't agree with the Mishnah Mahalachim Echad. It's much shorter. So the Gemara answers, I feel no, you can even say they don't argue. It doesn't have to be that they argue. Here are the words mechilois hoyu. Now, literally, mechilois means tunnels. There used to be tunnels, and v'nignizu, they were hidden. Like the story, it was even hidden from the guy that ran. When people read the pshat, they say it's a tunnel. So the tunnels don't wind. There's no traffic on the tunnels. One thing I can tell you, the tunnels, Vadai does not answer the first story of Nakai. Again, if Nakai put of 8 of Tchumen, I don't care how direct the tunnel goes. You can't tell me, again, this is based on the premise that Migdal, Tziviyah, is farther than the cities mentioned in the Mishnah. And what, 2,000 amma, 1 mil, let's say it's 1 kilometer. Let's say it's 1.5 kilometers, even if it's 2 kilometers. I don't know exactly what it is. I think 1 mil is around a mile. It's like 1.5 kilometers, whatever that is. To say that Mahalach Yoim without a tunnel, with a tunnel, it takes what? It takes 18-minute walk, 20-minute walk. So I'm going to suggest that Mechilois really refers to Kfitzas Haderech, and we learned the sugya good many years ago. I just want to share one insight that we chapped here at night together, that there's 2 types of Kfitzas Haderech. There's one type of Kfitzas Haderech that the miracle happens to the person that's walking, that he somehow jumps. He jumps. He goes quicker. He has an airplane. Another type of Kfitzas Haderech is that the road bends, the Makom bends. Actually, now we know, based on Einstein's theory of relativity, that time and space are bendable. So just think about, I want to use this as a mashal. If I'm standing here and Aviv, you're here. So if this is open, I have to traverse the entire paper. If you bend the place, if the derech has a kfitza, if you bend the place, you take 1 step. You're not flying. You're taking 1 step, and all of a sudden you get to your destination. I think that's the meaning of Mechilos, that they understood how to bring 2 places in space together, one to the other. I don't know. In the Gemara, it's all hidden here. It's tunneled in the Gemara. And
I'm trying to understand how the bull had Kvitzas Haderech also, because he followed the bull to Bavel, right?
I would actually give a bull more credit than a person. The bull intuitively knew Kvitzas Haderech. I think the only reason why the man was able to do it is because he followed the bull. Okay, the bull was the one that had Kvitzas Haderech, not the person. Not this Barnash over here, not this, a Yid. It says Barnash. We had Barnash is not a Yid before. Okay.
So they made the place come closer to each other?
Somehow. Yeah. And Hado, Dechsiv, and that's the Pasuk in Eicham that we're lamenting, that Godar Derachai Begazis, that he, that means God Almighty, walled up Derachai, my roads, with gazes, with stones. Nisivoisai, that's the Nisivois. The Nisivois is what we're talking about. Is Iva, he twisted my paths. A derech and a siva. A path, a road is something that everyone traverses on. And a nesiva is a mystical path, private path that no one knows. Hashem made it twisted. It's a twisted takes a lot more time. If things are twisted, things are yashar. The more twisted we are, the longer it takes to get to our destination. Okay. Now, when the Mishnah was speaking about the initial rabbinic decree regarding Rivoy, what was the whole thing? That if you have grapes, only grapes, not fruits, Rivoy, if you are Mahalach Yoim Echad from Yerushalmi, you no longer may redeem it. And then the Mishnah says that Misharabu HaPeiros, once there was enough Peiros in Yerushalmi to make the Nesachim, as we learned in the last year, so they made a new takana. Hiskinu, no. And the words of the Mishnah is Sheyia Nifta, that you can redeem it, Samuch L'chayma. Now, when you read the words of the Mishnah, literally, it sounds like you can only redeem it if you're Samuch L'chayma. But that doesn't make sense. It means you can redeem it even if you're mamash outside the wall. That's what the Gemara wants to say right now. Even though the Mishnah doesn't say afilu, but it means afilu kenem shoy Samuch L'chayma haya nifta. Vadai, if you were within the Mahalach Yom Echad, but not Samuch L'chayma, if you were 20 meters away, if you were a half a mile away, if you were a mile away, if you're 2 miles away, avada, you can redeem it. That was the Tanakama's version of. And they right away said that if there's going to be a lack, right, then the Gezeda goes back. Rabbi Yossi's version was not Misharabu HaPeiros, Mishacharav Beis HaMikdash, so there's no more Nesachim. Then they undid the enactment, but then the Mishnah writes that what? That when the Beis HaMikdash is going to be rebuilt, the Gezeda is coming back. Now there's a problem. Here, let me tell you the problem. There's 2 problems. First of all, based on the Seder, that first Mashiach will come and then the Beis HaMikdash is going to be built, as we'll see on Amud Beis, the coming of Mashiach is very much connected to there being a tremendous abundance of produce, specifically grapes/wine in Eretz Yisrael. So it doesn't make sense to say that when Mashiach will come, even though, we're going to be bringing Nesachim, we're going to have an issue of there's not enough Nesachim. And the solution for that is that the Beis HaMikdash is going to be built before the Mashiach is coming, before these miracles will happen. That's what the Gemara is saying. That the Beis HaMikdash we're going to build before Malchus Beis David. We have to show it to all of the Charedim, all of us. I want to find there's not that many Fruma people yet that understand that we have to build a Beis HaMikdash. They don't understand that. They're waiting for it to happen. When really, be'emes, you read the Rambam, according to the Rambam, we're chayiv to build a Beis HaMikdash. No, we don't know how to build by Shlishi. Mashiach will build by Shlishi. We're chayiv to build by Sheni. We're chayiv to build a Mizbeach. We're obligated. It's a mitzvah. If we can't, we can't. Question is, we can't? I don't know if we can't. I think we could. Daf Mem Tesamad Beis. Dichsiv, and I know whoever's going to read the Marav Fulda, he adds a whole other twist. It's not enough time, and I don't know where he got it from. Chas v'shalom to challenge him in that way. But the Gemara is proving it. Because since it says, I'm quoting a pasuk in Hazinu, regarding events that will happen with Malchus Beis David, that V'dameinov, that Tishtachamer, that even one grape will be so filled with juice that you'll make Agansa Maisa with wine from one grape. In other words, there's going to be a tremendous abundance of wine. If Mashiach will come before the building of the Beis HaMikdash, Rabbi Yossi's version doesn't fit. That when Mashiach is going to come, they're going to reenact the takana not to redeem it. So there shouldn't be a lack of wine. There's going to be a lot of wine. We won't lack wine. The answer is that you're right. When Mashiach will come, there's going to be a gavaldik amount of wine. But Rabbi Yossi is saying that if we'll merit to build the Beis HaMikdash today, right now, Halavai Mashiach will come today, can happen also. That's not up to us. But the building of the Beis HaMikdash is up to us because all mitzvahs are up to us. There isn't a single mitzvah that's not up to us. It's heretical. In other words, Shabbos. Mashiach will come, I'll keep Shabbos. That's what we don't do that. Keep Shabbos right now. Put on tefillin right now. If you don't have the tefillin, you can't. The art is scenarios, but generally you have to go get one. Go figure out how to get one. So va'at omer achi gavaldik is anaya again, according to our Gemara, that like we have, by the way, in the Seder HaTfilah, that's how we say. The Yerushalmi Mircha, Yerushalayim doesn't mean even the old city. Yerushalayim means the Beis HaMikdash, just for the record. What comes after Yerushalayim? Semach David. Clear. We learned this. We spoke about this in Brachas. I think Daf Chavtes, wherever the Gemara is going through the Seder HaTfilah. What is Danny looking at it from Rab Shimon Shazuri?
I just don't understand this whole proof because what are we saying?
In other words, Rabbi Yossi is saying that when he says when the Beis HaMikdash is going to be rebuilt, the enactment, the original takana will come back. Which means that if you have grapes within Mahalach Yom Echad, bring it to Yerushalayim. There shouldn't be a shortage. And the question is, when Mashiach is coming, there won't be a shortage of wine. Stam Lahoyd, right now in Eretz Yisrael, there's no shortage of wine. It's unbelievable. You see today, there's no shortage of wine. That means whichever one will come first. Mashiach will come first, the Beis HaMikdash will come first. We're not going to lack wine. We're going to have to just become familiarized with Dinei Tumah and Tara. Many of us learned a lot of it. We just don't practice it. I can see it. I can see how it works. And many times you're going to realize, I was tamei, all the wine is tamei. There's more wine. Right, the best wines. I remember many years ago. I think it was by the Fishman Bar Mitzvah. Many years ago, Jakey Fishman's Bar Mitzvah. There was a Yid called Yishai Fleischer. He spent Shabbos with us, and he gave us a hachlata that we kept until today. And that is that as a shul, we only buy wine from Eretz Yisrael. And then Ido has a chaver who's so right wing that
His whole thing was to make kiddush on wine from Eretz Yisrael.
To make it, he wanted us to buy wine, which we do. The shul only bought wine, only buys wine from Eretz Yisrael. But then there was a Yid always to critique it. What's Ido Cohen's right wing friend, Eric Zimmerman, God bless him? He says that the wine of Israel is so inexpensive relative because the government subsidized the water. In other words, when you buy wine from Eretz Yisrael, you're costing the Israeli government money. So you're saying, "Vos gesto, you buy wine, who are you helping?" But the emes is, okay, the Medina should pay, but the manufacturer is making money. You're giving parnasa to a Yid. That was a good thing. He was saying that it costs money, a bottle of wine. Anyways, let's go weiter. So now again, we have in the Mishnah the first machlokes Beishama and Beisilel regarding how similar or dissimilar is Revoi from Meiser Sheni. And here are the words. Kerem Revoi, Beishama yoimrim, 2 dinim. Guys, 2 dinim. Beishamai says, no chaimish, no beer. Now, by the way, it's self-understood. It's implied that all the other dinim, Revoi is like Meiser Sheni. Just you'll get the flow with that. So it sounds like they really argue. I would go further. Now that we quoted the Gzeira Shava that we have in the Bavli, I would say, Aviv, if you have a Gzeira Shava, then how can you make them separate? By Meiser Sheni, there is a chaimish when the owner redeems it. Meiser Sheni is subject to the laws of Biur. So you would think, when you read the Mishnah, that Beishamai doesn't subscribe to the Gzeira Shava. And by the way, so holds Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel, but that's subject to our machlokes. So says the Gemara, Tani, we learned in a Braisa. Rabbi says, no, you misunderstand Beishamai. Beishamai is saying something very limited. Where does Beishamai say that the Revoi is not 100% like Meiser Sheni? Only on the Shemitah year. If on the Shemitah year it happens to be that your vineyard is now undergoing its year of Revoi, okay, it's subject to Revoi, doesn't belong to the owner, but the product, the grapes are Revoi, then there only does Beishamai say that if you're taking it from Hefker, okay, so you own it. Let's say you want to redeem it, you don't have to pay a chaimish. There is where we say it's not subject to beer. The grapes that grew on Shvi'is are not subject to beer.
Beishamai and Beisilel are only arguing in Shemitah.
Only Shemitah year, very good. But when it comes to all of the 6 years, Beishamai will hold like Beisilel. Beishamai yoimnim yesh lechaimish and v'yesh lebeer. And what will just what's behind that? No, it's that Rebbe holds that everyone subscribes to the Gzeira Shava. But dafka because you have a Gzeira Shava, Beishamai has an argument. If I know the din of Revoi from Meiser Sheni, there is no Meiser Sheni by Shvi'is. And that's what the Gemara is saying. That al daiten dohadin tano. According to this Tana, means according to Rabbi, loy lamdu net Revoi elo Meiser Sheni. The problem is, there's a problem. Forget about there should be no chaimish. If it's taka learned from Meiser Sheni, who says Revoi B'chlal exists on the 7th year? Why does Beishamai say, it's not subject to chaimish? We'll say more. It's learned from Meiser Sheni. There's no Meiser Sheni on the 7th year. Let's go all the way. Let's say that anything that grows on the 7th year, B'chlal is not Revoi. So, Kamad the Tamer ein Meiser Sheni b'Shvi'is. The Gemara is asking, why are you only saying, since you learned from Meiser Sheni, and there's no chaimish, there's no beer, it's much more than that. There is no Meiser Sheni. So the Kavah say, ein neta Revoi b'Shvi'is, that's a Kavah. So there should be no neta Revoi at all. I'm sorry. No. There's no neta Revoi b'Shvi'is, meaning that there's no chaimish. There's no chaimish and there's no beer. Since you learned it from Meiser Sheni, there's no chaimish of Meiser Sheni, and there's no beer of Meiser. So that's why Beishamai says. So the Gemara says, hold on, me'ata al kedusha. Say it all the way. Say it's not even consecrated. So the Gemara says, and that will be even according to Rabbi, according to Beishamai, you don't need the Gzeira Shava for everything. Why not? Because the pasuk that we quoted from Parshas Kedoshim. You can see it in the Torah Eira Shalom. Ubashana Haravis, Yeh Kol Pidiyoi Kodesh. Torah calls it Kodesh. Hilulim Lashem. Kodesh, from which we will praise God. So the Gemara answers, that it's holy, we don't need to have a Gzeira Shava. Kodesh Hilulim. Meaning over here, Hareyu Ke Kodesh. What is Kodesh Hilulim? Kodesh Hilulim, according our Gemara, which is according to Rabbi, according to Beis Shammai, what other Kodesh, Aviv, is a Kodesh upon which we praise Hashem? Bikurim. Parshas Kisave. When Bikurim is brought, there are certain praises that we say to Hashem. That's the Hareyu Ke Kodesh Kodesh Alav Halal. And for the record, Bikurim is Noyeg on Shvi'is. There we go. So there is Kedusha, but there's no Chaimish. Chaimish is not Bikurim, you never redeem. Bikurim is not redeemable. You have to bring the Bikurim to the Kohen, right? Bikurim is not subject to beer, because Bikurim is like Truma. I mentioned that already in the intro. You can never destroy. Okay. So now the Gemara asks, hold on, according to all of this, the Mutalo Oinen. Now, the fact that Beis Shammai only says there's no chaimish and no beer, from that he implies that in all other dinim it is like Ma'aser Sheni, even on Shvi'is, including that it's Asur Lo'oinen. Maisris may not be eaten by an oinen. And the premise of the kasha is, so where do you get the kedusha from? Bikurim. The Gemara's premise is that an oinen should be allowed to eat it. Answers the Gemara Taina, no. Kodesh, from the word Kodesh, a side of Kodesh, Hilulim, comparing Revoi to Hilulim Kodesh, which is Bikurim, Kodesh means Hegdish. Kodesh means it's holy. Hegdish can never be eaten by an oinen. Kodesh, Magid Shu Asur L'oinen. But now we got a problem. And the problem is that according to everyone other than Rab Shimon Bar Yochai, Bikurim is subject to beer. Subject to beer. So you are telling me that according to Beis Shammai, during the 6 years we compare to Ma'aser Sheni. Okay. And Taka Chayiv beer. Shvi'is, we compare to Bikurim. Okay. But if it's compared to Bikurim, it should be Chayiv and beer like Bikurim. Must be answers. About no, not everyone holds that. Rab Shimon holds that Rab Shimon exempts Bikurim from beer because it's mamash like Truma. You never do beer by Truma. You don't do it by Bikurim. So everything fits. Everything fits. And the final kasha will be unanswered. The final kasha is, again, according to Rabbi, Beis Shammai holds of the Gzeira Shava for the 6 years. On the 7th year, there's no Gzeira Shava because there's no Ma'aser Sheni. So on the 7th year, you compare to Bikurim, here's the kasha. The only source from where we know that you cannot redeem Revoi while it's still connected is because we learn it from Ma'aser Sheni. We also have a Befedesh Tosefta. The Tosefta writes that Bein leBeis Shammai, Bein leBeis Hillel. Revoi can never be redeemed while it's connected to the ground. Now, let me ask you a question, my friend. Aviv, when is there Kedushas Bikurim? Even when it's connected to the ground. Bikurim is Bikurim even when it's Mechuber Lekarka. So this is the final question. According to you who hold that Beis Shammai learns the dinim of Rivoi on the 7th year from Bikurim, so it should be completely like Bikurim. And therefore, Beis Shammai L'chura should have said, not only Ein Loi Chaimish, not only that not subject to beer, like Rabbi says, only on the 7th year, he should have added that on the 7th year, you can even redeem it Mechuber Lekarka. And the Gemara doesn't have an answer for that. Now, what the Gemara is going to do right now, we have enough time, is to point out that this kasha, don't think is only according to Rabbi. Even according to Rab Shimon ben Gamliel, that learns Beis Shammai the way we learned it in the Mishnah. Beis Shammai says that the Revoi never is subject to Chaimish. It's never subject. Let's go work it out according to Rab Shimon ben Gamliel, and ultimately we're going to come back to the same kasha. So let's read it inside. Says the Gemara, we learned in the Braisa that we quoted before. Rabbi understands Beis Shammai one way, and Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel that you misunderstood Beis Shammai. Beis Shammai should be taken literally. that when does Beis Shammai say that Revoi ein loy chaimish and ein loy biur, that's not only on the year of Shvius, the echad sha'ar shnei shavua, no matter when, all of the 7th years. Beis Shammai yoimrim, ein loy chaimish ve ein loy biur. So let's start with that. Says the Gemara, that first of all, adate dohadein tana, according to Rav Shimon ben Gamliel, loy lamdu neta Revoi memaiser sheni kol ikar. He argues with what we have in the Babli. He never uses the Gzeira Shava. Why, Aviv? Because if we would use the Gzeira Shava, Revoi, Kodesh, to Meiser Sheni Kodesh, then they should be alike. Meiser Sheni has a din of Chaimish, so should Revoi. The fact that Rashbag learns, that Beis Shammai learns, it's never subject to Chaimish, so there's no Gzeira Shava. So hold on. If there's no Gzeira Shava, how do you know that it's solely? Ma'ata al yeloi kedusha. So the Gemara says, ukdusha sai me'elav lomadu. What's the me'elav? Kodesh ilulim, same ilulim from Bikurim. Kodesh ilulim, hareu kodesh. That the Revoi is like another type of kodesh. Which type? I write Bikurim. Hashem does it like that. A kodesh upon which you praise God, which is Bikurim. Now, before we go on, I have a kasha. According to this, how do you know you can b'chlal redeem Revoi? Where do you get that from? If there's a Gzeira Shava, okay, you see at least by the 6 years. If it's from Bikurim, is never subject to redemption. You can't redeem Bikurim. So the Rashirilio says on the fourth line on the left column, Hareu kekoidish, kemadregas hegdish, shekoidim. So he writes like this: Va'af al gav de Bikurim les lahu pidyon. Nevertheless, kiven the Rachmana apikoche hilul, and chilul, ask a Russian to say the word hilul. Mikan, that Chazal were all Russian Yidden. They won't say Hil, they'll say Chilul. Hello. There will go. Hey Neches, you see the Emes. The Torah Misinai is not the Yemenites, it's the Russians. We, Geja. Okay, so let's come back over here. So in other words, there is Kodesh Ilum, it means Bikurim, and you can be Mechalal it. In the same case, if you learn from Bikurim, so then we muter lo oinon, because Bikurim is muter lo oinon. So the Gemara says, aside of the Kodesh, Hilulim, just use the word Kodesh. Kodesh means it's Hegdish. Hegdish cannot be eaten by an oinen. Magid shuasal oinen. Now the final question, why isn't Chayiv bebir? In other words, based on the premise that Bikurim, is subject to beer. Dafnun. So the Gemara says the same answer. According to Rashbag, like we had before, according to Rabbi, no, that Beis Shammai will hold like what we learned later from Rab Shimon, which means Rab Shimon Bar Yochai says that Bikurim is pater from beer. Why? Again, Bikurim is bonafide truma, and the truma is also not subject to beer. Now the final kasha, that's unanswered. No, in other words, Bein le Rabbi, Bein le Rashbag, and let's go according to the Rashbag, we learn Revoi from Bikurim. Problem is that there is a Tosefta that writes explicitly. It writes, Bein le Beis Shammai, Bein le Beis Hillel. Revoi cannot be redeemed while it is still connected to the ground. Why not? If its Kedusha is similar to Bikurim, whatever you can do, Hilul, Chilul, whatever you can do to Revoi, you should do it when it's still connected also. Why? Because it's all from Bikurim. The dinam of Bikurim is even while it's Mechubar. The Yipadim Mechubar like Karka, Vaited unanswered. The beauty here, the Gemara wants to show you that if there would have been a only according to one of these two Tanoim, a question that's unanswered, then we would have sided with one over the other. The Gemara points out that the question that you're coming to is a kasha, both according to Rebbe, both according to Rashbag. We're not even attempting to answer it. Now you can always try to find an answer. Even if you don't have a Gzeira Shava, I'm going to use the word Hekesh. Where else do you find Pidyon? Where else? You don't find Pidyon by Truma. There's no pidyon by Ma'aser Rishon. There's no pidyon by Ma'aser Sheni. There's no pidyon by Peah, by Leket, by Sheni. There's no pidyon. Where do you find pidyon? Only by Ma'aser Sheni. I don't need a Gzeira Shava. Okay, it's a doichik. It's not a. In other words, we're trying to avoid the comparison. So you don't subscribe to a Gzeira Shava, but you make a Hekesh. Well, make a Hekesh all the way. Okay, so I get it. It's not an ideal answer. The beauty is, if both Tanoim have to carry an unanswered question, the Gemara is saying, I'm not going to lean one more on the other. And with that, we conclude the explanation of Beis Shammai.